want to set you up for today's lab by addressing this question here, which is, how does France go from a society that has social and economic problems, like we talked about in small group, to a society that is going to become incredibly violent, a society that's going to tear itself apart, and all the old ways of doing things, from the king and queen to the layout of who has power in society, is going to become undone. So France and revolution, how did it become violent? How are some of these extreme radical things that you're going to see in today's Reign of Terror lab, how did they get put in motion? Well, there's kind of 4 steps that I'd like you to walk through so you can better make sense of this lab. You have to go back to 1789. That's going to be the key year where France is beginning to face a financial crisis. All of those problems, economic and social, that King Louis had been kind of putting off and not really addressing in the previous 10 to 15 years, come to a head in 1789. King Louis decides he's going to finally face this by calling a meeting of all 3 estates: the church, the first estate; the nobility, the second estate; and members, representatives of the third estate. They're all going to come together in Paris in the spring of 1789, and they're going to try to come to some agreement on how France's financial problems can be sorted out. This meeting of the 3 estates has a name. It's called the Estates General, and it had been called into existence from time to time by previous French kings. The problem is it effectively brought representatives from all 3 of these estates together and reminded them how much they disagreed. It became a recipe for conflict. People who didn't like each other, had previous resentments, were all brought in a room together, and this tension boiled over. The Estates General quickly broke up in the summer of 1789, and members of the Third Estate began to claim the right to make laws for France as a whole. One of those Enlightenment ideas that people had natural rights and the rights to shape those and to shape the leadership and their government, that's being put into existence here. So the Third Estate representatives break off from the Estates General, and they call themselves the National Assembly. And this is going to be a source of great inspiration, and many people in the city of Paris and throughout France are going to embrace this. But at the same time, this National Assembly is declaring kind of a peaceful right to make laws in France. Violence and mobs also start erupting, especially in the capital city of Paris. And these mobs do an incredible amount of damage. They kill a number of government officials. They take over a number of government buildings, including, very dramatically, a government prison known as the Bastille. And that summer, it isn't clear what the fate of Paris or what the fate of the French Revolution will be. Later on in the fall of 1789, these mobs are going to follow the king out to Versailles. And remember, Versailles was set up as a safe place, a place for the king and queen to escape the mobs of Paris. And now it's being brought to their doorstep. And by the fall of 1789, King Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette are placed under a de facto house arrest. They're still going to remain the king and queen of France, but they're going to be brought back to Paris, and they're going to be closely supervised and scrutinized. The National Assembly is going to continue to make laws and claim it has the right to shape France as a nation. And this directly undercuts Louis's concept of himself as an absolute ruler. It isn't immediately obvious that the king is going to lose his life or the queen is going to lose her life. So for the next couple of years, the king and queen remain in kind of a supervised house arrest. But it's going to be in 1791 where your lab drops you into first. And that's going to be the decision on whether or not to execute, to put the king to death. And that's where I'll leave you to start this lab. If you have any questions, please reach out to us. Please follow the instructions on Canvas, and we'll have a short Google Meet, and that'll set this up a little bit further.